anybody who's computer science, who's taught in university level computer science courses, they should expect that anybody who wants to be a programmer should pick up these languages by themselves on their own, instead of being taught in a class. I do expect, for example, I do expect that if a developer needs to work with me, and I'm using a language they don't know how to use, that they would just go and get a book and start writing code in it. Okay. And any developers that come through my door and say, I need to go take a class in how to write program in this language, I personally is going to have second opinions about whether that person is going to be able to make it.
Yeah. And I'm just surprised with so much advice given by programmers, by developers with lots of experience, and very common question, and I guess that question comes from non-developers, is that like, which language should I learn in 2017 so I can make maximum, like I can make more money? And then they start drawing graphs like, okay, so JavaScript will get you like on average $106,000 per year. I mean, I looked at these graphs and I see something really strange. I mean, like first of all, how did they calculate? Because like what is a JavaScript developer job that doesn't require any other language? So like we have people only working with JavaScript. I can hardly imagine that kind of person or position.
But again, as we said, these days things are specialized. So even if you do have knowledge about the other language, there do exist positions where you're only gonna be using one tool of all the tools in your toolbox.
Yeah. And I think that limits you. I mean, you might not this is again my assumption, but I think you do not become a good software developer if you are just only learning JavaScript and only work with JavaScript. And every time someone asks you another question from totally different framework, you will struggle. But I just think that as you mentioned earlier, algorithms, like maybe you need to start with really algorithms, and maybe irrespective of the language that you're learning, you need to understand how simple problems are solved, and then later you can pick up the knowledge of more complex ones. And this is something I learned, because I used to think that all it takes is just for me to sign up for some like C# course, and that will bring me to the C# developer level. And I don't think so. I think I need to go to basics and maybe learn computer science basics stuff. But of course, learning it in a practical way, maybe solving certain problems. But just I don't think the language is a focus of.
It's not. It's totally not a focus for a person that's what we consider as at least a good software developer. Okay, and again, in software development job, this is completely expected learning. As we said before, you're spending half of your day researching problems, and that researching means learning. You really need to have a comfort to say, today I'm using C#, tomorrow I'm using Java, the day after I'm using PHP. Not necessarily you will do that, but you need to be comfortable doing that. Meaning that picking up a new thing is not going to scare you. It's not going to frighten you to be, oh my God, I need to put in that much effort to learn yet another language. If you ever say that, then you're going to find yourself to be limited in terms of being a software developer, basically. You need to be willing to say, oh, tomorrow we're using PHP. Great. I never used it before. Let me go learn it. I'm going to go read it tonight. See, that's a difference in terms of mentality. One mentality will ensure that you're not going to grow a lot, will ensure that you're limited. And in this job, learning is essential. Even if you just learn the same thing again, even if you learn, because we were talking about earlier, Angular 1 versus Angular 2 versus React. Okay? These three frameworks, they all have the same goal. Their goal is to try to make writing applications simpler, creating UI simpler. But there are three frameworks that do things differently. Now, do you go like, oh my God, I have to learn Angular 2 again after I learn Angular 1. I spent so much time on learning Angular 1 already. Why do I have to learn Angular 2? Versus say, oh my God, Angular 2 is the next hottest thing. I'm very interested. I want to go and learn it. So you were asking, say, why do these frameworks exist? And why are there so many? And why is it like like the monster of the week that they just keep on popping up? And then then are they like evolutionary flies that they just there's always a flavor the next week, something like that just show up, right? Part of it is it's what this industry is. This industry runs on fad. This industry runs on the fashion of the week. But this or we can say FUD, fear, uncertainty, of doubt, and doubt. They are somewhat related. But basically, this industry runs a lot of momentum. And when there's momentum, when people knows how to build momentum, then they can gain. There's a lot of gain from it. And then the interesting part is that developers are willing to put in the effort to learn these things. But here's the interesting thing. Well, I mean, before I get into this next thought, let me finish the first thought. The reason developers are interested because learning is innate for a lot of developers. Innate. That they are very, very interested in learning new things. Even if the new things does something just a little bit different. But you see, if you learn 10 different ways of doing the same thing, then you're going to have a pretty good idea on how this whole thing is all about. Right? But if you just learn one way of doing it, your learning is somewhat limited in terms of saying how to deal with this problem. Right?
Yeah, you're totally right about that, because my initial approach to this Angular 1, Angular 2, and React was just to spend as less time as possible. So, like, for example, okay, I just want to grab one and learn quickly how to do that and forget about other ones. And you are saying that basically this is not the right approach. So the right approach is basically to start with one, any random one, and then later you will have inspiration to learn another one, because you will find it faster, it will be easier for you. And I think that's exactly the difference between my initial approach and the right approach that can be followed.
Honestly, let me put it this way: I don't go out of my way to pick up new frameworks. Just so you know, I don't say, oh, check on Hacker News. What's the latest framework? Let me go learn it. I don't do that. I only learn it when I need it. But what I'm saying here is not that you have to go out of your way to learn everything under the sun, because some of them you'll never use them. Okay, and it's not efficient if you try to learn things without using it. But that's also because I have learned a lot in my career already, so I more or less know what they are likely to include. So these are not gonna be these are not the first 3 UI framework I've learned. I've even built my own UI framework, so that's the difference between where I would be then versus someone who's just starting out. However, on the other hand, what I'm trying to really point out here is that a lot of people who are not software developers are afraid to learn, afraid to put in the effort to learn. And that's where the problem is. The problem is that if you are afraid to learn, if you are hesitant to learn, if you are like, I just don't want to learn another thing again, then you will find software career to be very challenging, basically. But you don't have to go out of your way to learn it. You just have to be willing to learn it and happy to learn it when it's time for you to learn it.
I found almost a perfect coincidence between becoming a software developer and becoming a business person or running your own business, because unless you have a passion about it, otherwise you will just encounter so many problems that any hacking approach will just fail, because we cannot predict how many problems will come up. But on the other hand, I mean, if you just want to become a professional in business, you don't have to take that risk, and you can just learn something. Like, for example, you can learn accounting, you can spend a few years learning it, and after that, basically, your career is set. And until we have some AI that replaces accountants, maybe, which is not expected in the next few years. But these are two different approaches. So if you feel like you want to run a business, if you actually that's your stuff, then go for it and basically learn it by doing it, right? But when the other person doesn't have that much inspiration, so maybe for them it's easier to learn some particular trade, and then after that they will just basically use that. But they don't really feel so passionate about it, or just they don't learn every day. They don't really talk about that with other people. So that, I think that's a difference, really.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
business people and software
it
developers.
a lot has to do with the half-life of a technology, and in software, half-life is very short. And in some area of the software, especially like the JavaScript web world, the half-life is really, really short. And so, but in either case, the half-life in technology overall is shorter than it would be in other industries. So, so you really have to be willing to learn, willing to pick up new things. You know, it's like, this is the nth UI framework I've learned how to use. You just have to be willing to do that, because without learning that nth UI framework, there might not be the next UI framework for you to learn. So don't you know, not, you know, be willing to learn, be willing to play with technology is really the prerequisite to be a software developer.
Yeah, that's very true.
Okay, all right. So have we addressed this question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a great discussion, really. I mean, even though we were talking about that in some earlier videos, and we already talked about how to learn software development, right? And I think it's very much in line with what we discussed, but this is more in-depth discussion. I think it really helps, and I think it goes very well against those advices that I see on Quora all the time, like, okay, so how to learn software development? Oh, just find a good Java book and start reading it, you know, like that kind of advice. I really don't like this kind of advice, because it doesn't lead you anywhere. It's just like, okay, so okay, I can read the book, I can even memorize it, and then what happens? I mean, how does it make me software developer? So this is a very, very good advice.
Okay, awesome.